Within this old house live two residents. One of them is John Russell, composer, professor. The other has been dead for over 70 years.
Claire, I'd like to talk to you about the house.
Did you die in this house? How did you die?
Whatever it is trying desperately to communicate.
Welcome to the latest episode of the podcast That Wouldn't Die. I'm your host, Kevin. With me, as always, is Aaron.
How do you do?
This week, we'll be discussing the horror classic, The Changeling, starring George C. Scott and others. What are your thoughts and feelings, Aaron?
Oh, before we go into that,
Please.
I was reflecting on our conversation. We always have this conversation over which actors are acting and which actors are always themselves.
Yes.
And you did rightly point out that there are some actors that I like Sean Connery, who's always Sean Connery, right?
Right.
So I was reflecting on that, and I think maybe you're right. There's just people I think are interesting and people I think are boring.
Well, there's a difference between being what we call a leading man. Leading men typically play themselves. And then there are people who are just bad actors. You know what I mean? Where it's like, we're assuming they're playing themselves, but who the hell knows what emotion they're playing?
Exactly. I mean, I hate to rag on Kevin Costner. Why should I go?
You do. There you go.
I like to rag. He's right up there with Shatner as far as I'm concerned. Although Shatner riding up the giant fist of fury, it looks like he's fisting Jeff Bezos into space.
He could be.
I've actually warmed to Shatner because Shatner's so freaking over the top, you gotta laugh. Versus Costner, just self-important.
Well, this is an important conversation to have. You have to watch Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and you will see Shatner at his Shatneriest. It is the most. It's almost like a parody. It's like this is what the comedians and impersonationists are doing when they talk about how horrible Shatner is. It's that level of ridiculousness.
Which reminds me, we need to watch The Wrath of Khan.
Wrath of Khan is a great movie.
It's a great movie.
It's great. Again, Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Could we be more pretentious? No. First of all,
I saw that son of a biscuit at the theater. Yeah, so you don't get confused that you're watching the TV show at the theater.
That's correct. That's correct. No. The original Star Trek movie is like they took the most boring aspects of 2001: The Space Odyssey. It's horrendous. It is awful. It is unwatchable.
I'm not even sure if in the series, at least, Shatner was trying to put his D in anything that wiggled,
yes,
including like a tribble. I think.
Wait a minute, Shatner or Captain Kirk? Let's be clear what we're talking about.
Is there a difference? Isn't that what we're discussing?
Oh, sweet Jesus! Sad but true.
So, sadly, now that he's in his 90s, there's less of that going on. Sadly, or maybe I don't know. But you're right. I love Sean Connery. So who cares? But I was just listening to this TCM podcast about the Bonfire of the Vanities, and they were talking about Bruce Willis, who I cannot frickin' stand. I find him so irritating and so pompous, but he is amazing in Pulp Fiction.
Yep.
He should have won an Academy Award. So what's going on there?
That's the question.
Is it he's acting, or is he Bruce Willis with a good script?
It's hard to say. When we talk about Kevin Costner, I think Kevin Costner of the 80s is actually
Robin Hood, Men in Tights, or whatever.
No, I'm talking Field of Dreams, Bull Durham, No Way Out. That era, Kevin Costner is quite enjoyable. Something happened around Dances with Wolves where he thought like, well, instead of acting, I will just be kind of stoic, and that will be my role. That's kind of like acting, and then I don't have to work as hard.
I'm sure it's kind of like acting, but I don't have as many lines to remember, and I don't really have to give a shiz.
Basically, it's like watch Dance with Wolves, and I swear to God, for the next 15 plus 20 years, who's to say, it is literally like I'm sleepwalking through these roles. Horrible.
Yeah.
And the movies are longer. They're 3-hour movies at that point.
I mean, Bull Durham, whatever. I know men have to watch these baseball movies.
We do.
But it's like, if you could only combine baseball movies, Losing Fathers, and The Princess Bride into a single craptacular extravaganza, all men would be at the theater.
Is that too much to ask? That's all I'm saying. We're kind of got off on a jag here. Shall we talk about The Changeling with George C. Scott?
I don't really see much point in it. If you're of a certain age, you could always tell the difference. This is before HBO.
Right.
There were movies that were made for TV. So, and you would know. They would say it's a whisper. Oh yeah, they just redid Romeo and Juliet, and then a whisper. It's a made for TV movie.
Right.
And honestly, that's what this tastes like. With like, it's long, it's drawn out, it's a slow burn. I'm not going to say it's terrible,
Right.
but you're waiting. It's one of these, you're waiting until 3/4 of the movie for something to start happening. Not once was I ever nervous, frightened, except when I realized how old George C. Scott is and how young these ladies are that he's picking up on.
Oh, poor George C.
I found that a little nerve-wracking.
Go ahead and give us your 30-second synopsis of The Changeling.
All right. Old man composer. I'm guessing like Billy Joel. If they recast this, it would be Billy Joel.
No, he's a classical composer. He's not a pop composer. Poor Billy Joel.
Poor Billy Joel is right. Standing on the side of the road, car broke down. And, apparently this is before there's no Caltrans in whatever, Connecticut.
No AAA, right?
No AAA. So let's all get out of our car and play along the icy road. Truck comes by wife and child. So he packs up all his crap, moves to Seattle, land of Samira and the Ring. Yep. And it moves into this mansion where apparently is haunted. And don't be thrown off by waiting for his child to appear. That's not the Changeling. Now he just becomes an investigator and tries to figure out. It's like The Sixth Sense. If The Sixth Sense had really nothing going on, the ghost needs some help, and George C. Scott's going to solve the mystery, and then kind of drops the ball at the end. As usual, everything burns down. Justice ensues. The end.
Very nice. Now, when did you ever heard or seen this before? Had you ever seen this before?
I have never seen this before.
Okay. So
where did you pull this one out of? Was this on like Pluto, Fubu? What terrible free movie channel did you find this on?
I believe you watched it on Tubi, if I'm not mistaken. I watched mine
with commercials.
With the way God intended it to be viewed. I watched this on Shudder. I've got the Shudder app for Halloween. I always kind of chime in like a couple times. I'll take a month here of Shudder, a month there of Shudder, and then I move on with my life.
Well, let me just say that the beauty of Tubi, unlike network TV, they just throw the commercials in wherever,
any which way.
In the middle of a scene, like in the middle of high suspense, it'd be like, okay, 7 minutes has gone by. Let's put on 6 commercials. And they're always the same 6.
Yes.
So every frickin' break. And sometimes they don't have enough commercials. So of the 5 commercials, the first one may show up again at the end. So that's what you get for free television these days.
That's what you get for being poor. It's a sad. The poor takes it worse than anybody. You have to put up with Tubi's commercials.
How many subscriptions do I have to be an American?
It's a sad situation. Ain't no lie. No.
Bye.
I originally became familiar with The Changeling, I swear to God, just from the cover of the box on like the 99 cent video store shelf, basically. And it looked creepy. It's like an old creepy wheelchair kind of chilling in a dark, scary house.
Oh yeah,
Sounds good.
Victorian children in wheelchairs. Those are fantastic.
And it's a sad situation because this doesn't take place during the Victorian era. So they were recycling old wheelchairs from back in the day for the poor child up in the attic. Very sad situation.
Yeah. Apparently, in the 1930s, the dad, as we learned, apparently really didn't care for his child and just dug around in the attic. And they're like, 100 years before. Well, no, it doesn't even make sense because the house was built in the 30s. So, yeah, where do you get this old, weird Victorian?
Well, and why do you have a crazy old...
the thrift store.
Here's the question. You have a child who cannot walk for whatever reason. I don't think they ever go into detail. The kid can't walk. I'm going to build this gigantic mansion which is nothing but stairs. Nothing but stairs. That's the indicator that your dad doesn't really love you, son. I'm sorry to say. Nonstop stairs. You're trapped in the belfry in your crazy old Victorian wheelchair. Sad situation.
Honestly, to me, that part of the story made no sense because they could have just pulled a Kennedy where you just ship your child off when you have all the money in the world, but you still choose to ship off your disabled child, never to bring her home again.
Well, okay, so we're jumping into this. We're getting deep now.
I'm just saying they could have done the same thing because in the end, the twist makes no sense to me.
Well, okay, here's the thing. Let's just jump right into WTF moments or highlights.
Or what we call just the Changeling.
Just the Changeling. Number one, if you know what a Changeling is, then that kind of spills the beans about what the entire movie's about.
I remember the Changeling because I had this book of Norse mythology, and like the trolls would swap out human babies for their babies because troll babies were terrible. And according to the children's book, what you had to do if you suspected that your baby was a changeling is you took them out into the forest and beat them until they screamed, until it broke the troll mother's heart, and they came back and offered you back your own child.
So wait, let me just run this down. So if it's actually your child and you're mistaken, you just beat this kid to death? I mean, eventually it's like, if it dies, then you know you were wrong? Is that how it works?
It's like, I guess she's not a witch, she drowned. I think it's that same kind of logic.
Right. So yes, in mythology, yes, your child was taken away and replaced with something not your child, kind of a body snatcher kind of situation. And I think we need to say that there was a movie that came out not that long ago, also called Changeling, starring Angelina Jolie. Thank you very much. Which was, if you've never seen this is the most disturbing, upsetting movie. There's a serial killer on the loose. I'm just going to talk about this real quick. Serial killer who targets children back in like the 20s or 30s, whatever it was.
Right.
Angelina Jolie's child disappears. And she's concerned that it's been killed by the serial killer. The people in power, for some just incompetence or maliciousness, give her another child saying, this is your child. What do you mean?
Oh, yeah.
This is your child. And she, of course, is like, this isn't my child. What are you talking about?
They're going to like put her in the mental institution.
And that's what they did.
Right?
Clearly, she's insane because she's not accepting her child. So, yes, they throw her in the insane asylum because she's rejecting one child. Yes.
Let this be a life lesson. If you, in fact, have a child that's 8-year-old, maybe bring it in public so that other people can see it.
Right.
Then you can have a witness testifying.
This is just good advice. It's just good advice.
Don't raise it in the basement.
Don't do it.
You know, from one mother to another.
So when I'm a child, the movie's called The Changeling. I have no idea what that means. It just sounds kind of creepy. It's like, okay, sounds kind of creepy. I saw this movie, I don't know how long ago, 15, 20 years ago for the first time. First time I saw it, I found it kind of creepy. Kind of creepy. It is a slow burn. It is definitely a slow burn. It's a very slow burn. Let me say that one more time.
I would agree, Brother Bear, would agree.
The biggest issue with this movie is you've got George C. Scott renting this gigantic mansion. Why does he need a gigantic mansion? Who's to say? Then we're talking, this is like 100 rooms? I mean, this place is freaking huge.
No, it was giant. And it had a mansard roof, in case you don't know. That's the type of roof like the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland.
Right.
So you know it's already messed up because that's the Munsters house has a mansard roof. If you see a mansard roof, there's a baby in your basement.
No
Just
question.
100%.
No question.
Note to architects.
No, exactly. They know what they're doing. And, I mean, ostensibly, he's like, I'm a composer. I can't have neighbors pounding on the wall while I'm trying to compose, I guess.
You lived in New York in an apartment building with people above you, below you, and on either side of you. Shut the front door. But in Seattle, I need to be in a mansion in the middle of the city.
That is correct. Good Lord. So the house is haunted. Even the lady who's like, hey, the Historical Society is cool to rent. By the way, I have to talk about the Historical Society. Does the Historical Society typically rent historical places? Like, is it just, for rent by owner kind of situation? I know it's historical. Lincoln slept in the bedroom, but sure, bring your rowdy kids over here, throw a party. That's cool. Is that how it works? I'm not sure.
I think it really, there's nothing to stop them from doing it. I mean, you can buy a house that is a registered historical site. I mean, it's up to you. If you have a society, you can rent it out. We have a Frank Lloyd Wright house here that they let out to visiting artists and stuff like that.
But it's not a frat house, though, I'm assuming.
What, do you think George C. Scott's tearing it up?
He's
bringing Jack Nicholson over and Sean Connery, and they're going to be like busted heads.
Roman Polanski hangs out from time to time. Who's to say?
I just don't see Sean Connery and Roman Polanski moving in the same circles.
They move in the same circles.
And John Wayne, the ghost of John Wayne shows up too.
The biggest, that's right. The biggest issue with this movie is that it's obviously a haunted house, but at no time does George C. Scott even seem remotely concerned.
It's more annoying. They're like, what's that? What's the fakafta banging in the hallway? I'm trying to have my coffee. What's up?
It is. It's like a mystery to be solved rather than a terrifying, life-altering experience that would have you running from the house screaming. Right?
Yeah, he's just like, well, to tell the truth, this is not like Poltergeist. There's no faces melting, no one's ripping. It's not 13 ghosts. It's some loud noises. That's it.
That's good enough for me. I don't need to see a disembodied head floating down the hallway. At the moment they tell me, well, there's some stuff going on in here, and then I'm hearing weird, crazy doors slamming, I'm out.
It's always the boiler.
Hey, it's an old house. What are you going to do? Move the hell out? I think it's what I'm going to do. I mean,
exactly.
And
I can't afford to keep the lights on. Did you notice that, like, the night shots, like he's coming back, that all lights are on in all 3 stories? So he can't go to bed for 40 minutes because now he's got to climb up to the attic and start snuffing candles or something? What the hell's that?
Well, and frankly, that's how it was when my parents would leave the house. When I was a kid, they'd be like, oh, we're going out.
The Ghost Boys having a rager with like Lizzie Borden and, Samira and whatever freaky Japanese ghosts are hanging out in the Pacific Northwest.
It's true. I'm turning on every GD light if I'm in there. But usually they have to contrive some kind of reason why he can't move out. Oh, sorry, you have no money. Right? This is every place in the county is booked and you have to stay in this house. They have to contrive. There's no discussion about that at all. He's like,
there's no hotels in the greater Seattle area. There's no rooms for Lent. Even the hobos don't want you.
But he doesn't even inquire. He goes in back.
He doesn't giza.
He does not giza. He goes back to the Historical Society. He's like, have there been any strange occurrences in this? Yes. Huh. Interesting. Okay. Well, I'm going to go back and compose. What? Serious?
Yeah. I have a complaint. My house is not haunted enough.
Basically. I guess, if you're George C. Scott, you're like, look, I was patting in World War II. I've seen some stuff. There's nothing this house could show me. Is that what we're supposed to think? I don't know. Who's to say?
Exactly.
Who's to
What's he
say?
gonna do? Start crying? Him and Telly Savalas are gonna start crying? Yeah.
Why is Telly Savalas there? Who's to say? But they're not crying over it.
I was thinking of angry men who wouldn't be scared.
That is true, though. But that kind of ruins the fear factor for me when the audience surrogate is totally not really bothered by this at all. That kind of makes it less scary for me, who's watching him not be very concerned.
I'm gonna jump ahead. He's jumping in closed up wells, digging out corpses of dead boys, and like what the hell? He's lighting a cigarette off the skull of a dead baby, and having a scotch. He don't gives a. He is not bothered by any of this.
He was digging through that well with his bare hands.
Bare freaking
not
hands.
concerned even a little bit. We're bouncing all over the place. I got to go back to the beginning because I think the funniest scene in this movie is you've got George C. Scott, who is 75 years old if he's a day in this movie, and his youngish wife. I guess she's kind of age appropriate. She's not 25.
I mean, she's not 19-year-old Uma Thurman, but she's too young for him.
She's definitely too young for George C.
He ain't that rich, and he's sure as hell not that good looking.
That's sad but true. And they're like 8-year-old daughter. Okay, I guess he's Charlie Chaplin at this stage of the game, where he's spawning children.
Womp, womp, womp. Casting the seed to the four winds.
Pretty much. You talked about it. His car breaks down on the side of the road in the snow. He goes across the street. Luckily, there's a phone booth just on the side of the road. Thank goodness for that, at least. While his wife and daughter are playing in the snow. Then in slow motion, you see there's, I guess, a drunk driver coming down one side of the road. There's a semi driven by an imbecile coming up the other side of the road. And you just know, oh, this is the end of my children. They're dead meat because evidently brakes were not invented at this stage.
Bye, Christy Brinkley.
That was it. That was ball game. It was basically like, look, it's an icy road, but you have to accelerate? I don't know if that's necessary at this stage of the game. Is it bring a moron to work at the trucking company that day? Who's to say? Who's to say? And I have to say, the wife and child, you don't literally have to lay down under the tires of the semi. Not necessary. Okay, I get it.
So ridiculous.
It was
so ridiculous.
Meanwhile, George C. can see this coming down the road, and he's in one of those trick phone booths that cannot be opened under normal. He's like tugging at the door. Please, honey, look at. It was hopeless. Very sad situation. And
because semis are like Priuses. You just can't hear those coming at all.
And if only George C. could have opened that phone booth, I guess he could have jumped in front of the semi as well, go for 3. I don't know what he thought he was going to do at that stage of the game. Very sad situation. Burr. And frankly, in retrospect, the death of his wife and daughter really had nothing to do with anything, right?
This whole thing could have just, it was a red herring because you think it is the daughter that's haunting him because the red ball is bouncing in the apartment.
Okay.
The red ball is bouncing in Seattle, so it's your little trickaroo.
Gotcha.
Your red herring. So
that makes sense now that you pointed out to me because it totally went over my head. I had no idea what. You're right. So he's in the haunted house. He's supposed to think, oh, my daughter's obviously haunting me. But he never says, like, honey, are you there? There's no conversation about that, right? Who's to say?
No. And once he's really in the house, he never thinks it's his daughter.
No, he never says that. He never. No, right. That's why it went over my head. He's never like, maybe it's my daughter haunting me or my angry wife. Who's to say? No. I mean, maybe.
Literally, Baby Ghost throws a rock at him. He walks upstairs, and the whole murder of the child is revealed. So, boom. All right. So much for the intrigue.
That was.
Now what?
I guess in retro, because you're right. There's a moment where he has a vision something occurs, because otherwise he would never find out the answer. They couldn't figure out a way to tell the story where he discovers the solution. They literally just have to have him have a premonition and pass out in the middle of the house and then suddenly know all the answers.
They did bring a psychic. I mean, I guess she could have written something. She was doing automatic writing, but her penmanship was rather poor.
Well, and that's the thing. The moment he finds out the house is haunted, he goes and like reads the records about who died and who was living in the house in 1906 and who died. And there's this whole red herring about it. It's a doctor and his daughter and wife were run over by a coal wagon, as happens in 1906.
Right.
So he hires a psychic along with the nice lady.
Did you say a coal wagon? Do we have coal mines on the West Coast? I'm looking this shit up.
I don't know if they had coal mines, but they used coal. They burned coal on the West Coast. They didn't have nuclear reactors back in 1906. They had to do what they had to do.
We didn't have coal. We didn't use coal.
What did we use?
On the West Coast? You'd have to transport it all the way across the country.
That's correct. And they did that.
That's why we don't have those coal fire furnaces on this coast like they do on the East Coast.
So what did they use for power then?
So they would burn things. I mean, we have oil.
Corpses? What were they burning? Tell me.
They could. Heretics. And
that's right. Witches.
Mormons, blasphemers. I don't know.
The usual. Interesting. You look that up while I continue on my crazy rant.
Do. So
he hires the medium. And he brings along the nice lady from the Historical Society who he's got a little passing infatuation with. And her mother is also there for some reason. Mom's going to come to the seance as well. Okay. So then, lay it on me.
You
got? Lay it on me.
There's a case of coal fires in the Pacific Northwest. The Green River Underground Coal Fire is the only one in Oregon and Washington has coal. Whoa!
There you go.
Maybe it's just Cali. All right.
It's not just Kentucky and West Virginia after all.
Oh my God, it's like London and Jack the Ripper here, the Pacific Northwest.
That's how they do it. And that's when they discover it's not the doctor's daughter, it's somebody named Joseph Carmichael, and I think at this point, that's kind of a reveal because we've already met Senator Carmichael, haven't we?
Right. But I didn't put that together because I wasn't paying attention. It didn't seem important when we first met him.
Right. I don't think they hammered the name with the ancient senator that his name was Carmichael. I don't think so, but maybe they did and I was falling asleep.
He looked like one of our old senators, Alan Cranston.
It was absolutely Alan Cranston. Thank you all, California political people from the 80s. I have to take a little sidewalk here. I had to watch this in 3 sittings because I kept falling asleep. Can I tell you again, it was a slow burn. It was a slow burn.
I remember pausing it, going back the next day and thinking, what? There's still another hour? What?
I fell asleep so often that I can't read some of my notes. It's like the scrawlings of a madman because it was literally like...
It was like the psychic with the scribble.
It was absolutely the scribbling psychic. That's what I was doing. Sweet Jesus, this is hopeless. So they do the scribbling things. It's Joseph. And then they move to another table where there's a crazy metal cone in the middle of the table.
What the hell was that?
I have no idea what the purpose of the cone was. Joseph, we're here to help you, Joseph. Joseph, talk to us. How did you die? And then the cone's kind of wobbly. If the cone, what does the cone do? If it falls on you, then that means something. I'm not sure what the story was. Very sad.
I thought it was like those cones, like for deaf old people or something. You put it to your ear. But that made no goddamn sense.
Look, I mean, maybe there's one of our listeners who's a practicing medium. Could just leave us a note, something that says like, oh, you fools. Clearly that aluminum cone was meant to divine the blah, blah, blah. Give me something here.
Well,
friends.
How about someone who's not practicing? Maybe somebody who actually knows what they're doing. They perfected it.
They're no longer practicing. They have mastered it. Exactly. And I especially like immediately after the seance, I swear to God, there's 20 minutes of George C. Scott fast forwarding, rewinding the tape recorder, because he recorded the seance. And of course, you couldn't hear any ghostly voices in real time, but somehow on the recording, it's this crazy voice. What is your name? What is your name? Joseph! Daddy! Don't throw my corpse in the well! Or whatever. I'm paraphrasing. It's something along those lines. And it was literally like one of the, you know how on The Simpsons, they have women do the voices of like Bart Simpson or whatever. Clearly,
Nancy Cartwright.
They've clearly brought in Nancy Cartwright to do the voice of this little boy. It's Joseph. My dad drowned me in my wash basin. It's a sad situation. And then, of course, George.
You know what?
Go ahead.
It totally reminds me of, remember all the ghost hunter shows when that was all the rage?
Oh, yeah.
They would like just be yelling down the hall and then they'd go back and faintly, they'd have to boost this to 10,000 whatever watts and you could hear some. So it was something like that.
So it wasn't a 70s era reel-to-reel tape recorder that was able to suss it out?
They wish. Ask me a question like George C. Scott.
Hey, Joseph, is that you? How did you die, Joseph?
Well, hi, George. My name's Joseph. Let me tell you how my father killed me. That's how clear it was.
Go, Joseph. You know what they say. That's what it was. It was, and again, you think you'd be, if you're George C. Scott, you'd be like, oh my God, what is this reveal? No, not so much. No. Interesting.
Non-plus.
Mildly interesting, but not really. Good times.
I'd be like, come over here and listen to this, sweet baby Jesus. I'm getting out of this mofo house. Help!
Pretty much. Well, and that's what's so fun. So he has his vision. And he's like laying on the couch, relaxing. And then what's her name from the Historical Society shows up and is immediately hysterical. Just crying in the corner. What are you doing? He's like, I think his father must have drowned him in the... What are you talking about, George? And she calls him George in the scene. The actor's George. The character's John. We're not...
That's beautiful. They're like, oh, that was too good to redo. We'll just keep that in there.
No second take there. Okay, good times. And I literally wrote down, why is she screaming? Because there's no preamble. She's just sitting staring into the camera like having some sort of an episode while he's barely awake. He's basically taking a snooze in the background. So Joseph, the father, put him in the well. What are you doing, George? I was getting whiplash from these performances. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Sweet Jesus.
So she's hysterical. He could give a. And then the ending, quite frankly, I mean, there's a couple of things. Why later on does the baby ghost attack her?
Yep.
Pushing her down the stairs and throwing old Victorian wheelchairs at her. And second of all, I don't even know where to go. There's the well with the body that nobody wants to investigate. I mean, this is not like CSI Seattle. They like didn't even go and sift through anything. They just scooped up the bones that George C. Scott already ripped out of the hole and couldn't give a F. Yes. And then at the very end, he goes and confronts the senator and just says, okay, I don't want any money. Screw it. Here's all the evidence. Here.
Yes.
Peace.
I wrote 2 pages on this because this is where it gets bizarre. So the vision tells him that back in 1906, I guess the doctor and his family didn't live there. I don't know what that was, a clerical error. Anyway, there was a wealthy guy who lived in this house with his sickly son, basically. And the father was, I guess, a dick to his father-in-law. So the father-in-law, who was super wealthy, was not going to leave anything to the father. Okay. Instead, he's leaving it all to the sickly son. And the father only gets money as the executor of the trust, I guess, as long as the son is alive. But since the son is sickly with something, I don't know, polio, so they don't get into details. If he dies...
The
rickets, that's what it was. If the son dies before he's 21, then all the money goes to charity. That's basically, so the father's like, I ain't rolling the dice on sickly Joe over here. I'm going to drown his ass in the wash basin, throw his ass down the well on another property I own in case the police want to sniff this out. And then I'm going to grab an orphan from the Sacred Heart Orphanage and I'm going to go to Europe for 15 years. So then I can tell people, hey, this is my son. He's not sickly anymore. He was cured. The good European air cured him. And now it's all good, basically, is what it is. So the ghost in the house was the sickly son who was drowned in the wash basin. Basically, that's the grand reveal. And the senator is the fake son. He's the
changeling.
He's the changeling. That's the grand reveal. So there's no supernatural changeling going on. It's just the pissed off son, the ghost of the son, is haunting the house, not haunting the well, I might add, where his body actually is. Just haunting the house. Okay, I'm not a ghost, and I'm going to go on and on. Aaron, jump in whenever you feel. Basically, you think of the easiest thing to do would be haunt the well, right? When it's just a well. Ooh, I'm going to go draw water. Go ahead.
Isn't that how all these movies go? It's like you gotta find the body. That's where the haunting is. Am I crazy? Isn't that traditionally what we do in these horror movies?
Like literally somebody going down there to fetch water, pulls a skull out, and maybe asks a couple questions. And we're good. Mystery solved. No, I'm not going to do anything to the well. Eventually, they're going to build a house on top of it. I'm not going to haunt that house. I'm not going to mess with that house at all. Instead, I'm going to haunt the mansion 100 miles away in case somebody wants to rent it. And I'll give it is madness.
It's ding dong daddy-o. Let me just say that.
Sweet Jesus.
It really, it wants to be a slow build, and then it starts having critical mishaps at this point. Straight to hell.
Straight to
gold
hell.
Medallion. I'm gonna use the only identifying thing and bury my son with that.
Yes.
Where clearly this necklace has been in the dirt for about 4 seconds.
Yes.
It hasn't been around a decomposing corpse for 70 years. And then I couldn't figure it out. If the senator act like he knows all about it, but then at the end, he didn't know anything about it.
It's hard.
So he must die?
This is a question. It's hard to know what the senator knew because presumably he was taken from the orphanage at 5 years old after the murder had occurred.
Right.
So it's possible he doesn't know anything. Now, should he know he's adopted? Probably.
If you never discuss it and you have no contact or anything from 5, how much do we remember at 5?
And I have to wonder, you're adopted and your name is Floyd Johnson or something, Otis, right? Who whatever your name is, you're adopted and your adopted parent says, now your name is John Patrick, whatever his name, Carmichael. Now this is your name. Is that typical as well? I'm going to give you an entirely different name.
That happens.
Okay.
It happens.
That seems crazy to me.
People go to China, adopt babies, and then bring them here and call them Timmy O'Toole.
Not too often, I imagine. Timmy O'Toole. Interesting. Could be. Sweet Jesus.
It happens. It's like you go to the pound, get a dog, and then you give it a name. It may be called Trixie at the pond, and maybe the terrible family that abandoned it in the field called it Elmer, but now you're going to call it something else.
Because that's what we're supposed to think. So on some level, because George C. confronts the senator at the airport waving the medallion around, and I guess we're supposed to think that if the police would have found the medallion with the body, that would have been evidence of this crime. I guess.
Which is why it needed to be with the body so someone can find it other than you.
Right. So you think, Ghost Boy, that if you wanted justice, you would have had the little metal crawl out of the well when they were finding the body. Instead, it crawls out of the well hours later when George C. is trespassing now and digging around in the well with his bare hands. When it's of no use now.
100%. And jumping ahead,
Go ahead.
if you can use your powers from anywhere, why didn't you just pop the senator's head at the 10 years before and call it a day?
Right. Your father's been in the ground for God knows, because the father is really the villain. The ancient who drowned you. Now, I mean, maybe he did. Maybe he used his magical powers to kill the father 50 years ago. We don't know. No explanation. But now he's trying to get revenge on the person, the changeling, the one who basically is living his life, theoretically, I guess, right?
It's my medal. Why do you have my medal?
But, and it's like, okay, so he finds the medal, and I guess the evil father 50 years ago made a duplicate medal to give to his new orphan child. Why not just give the orphan the old medal? How about that?
Agreed. Why? Well, yeah, exactly. Why would you want to leave something that to identify where it's obviously so important,
right?
That's going to identify who the body is. It's like that's why the mafia, I'm sure, doesn't put your driver's license in your mouth after they bury you.
Typically not. Let's just say that. Typically, there may be extenuating circumstances. Sweet Jesus. But one thing that we talked about, which is bizarro, George C. seemingly does everything that the ghost wants him to do. And then later...
Except the end.
I mean, is he supposed to go and strangle the old senator? I mean, what is he supposed to do? He has no evidence that the senator did zippity-doo-dah, because the senator didn't do anything.
The senator didn't do anything. Why wouldn't you gone to the media or something? This guy's a senator. Everybody would want to hear the story. You lay this evidence out. This is my story. This is what's going on. Not, here I'm dumping a box of shit at your door. I've done my duty. F*** off, little ghost baby. Later.
Well, I mean, I'm just trying to envision what this press conference looks like. Look, guys, I rented an old spooky mansion. I hired a medium. I had a weird premonition. And then I was digging around in a corpse grave with a medal. Case closed.
Boom, I'd read that article. LA Times, let's get on that. Yeah, you can bring the press over. You can do a Beetlejuice and have the little dead baby do an act, come down, speak in a spooky voice,
Why
tell
not?
the tale.
Chase the reporters around with a Victorian wheelchair. Why not? It'll be fun for the whole family. Sweet Jesus. Anything else you want to say?
I am never buying a house that has a well under the floorboards.
Just don't do it. It's not a good thing to do.
It would have been better if his sister Samira also crawled out of the well.
This was The Ring before The Ring, but not done as well.
That's right. We didn't have VCRs then.
We did not. 7 days. Hey, Daddy drowned me. Shall we do behind the scenes? Are you ready?
I'm ready. What do you got? One thing?
Oh no. I got loads of crapola. This is a reoccurring theme. Director Martin Scorsese includes this film on his top 11 scariest horror films of all time list.
Oh my God. Because he's an old man, so maybe it was scary for him. He's out of his effing mind. Basically, if I go up and tap him on the shoulder unexpectedly, his heart's just going to seize up.
It will seize, much like Senator Carmichael. That's how it happened. We don't even know what happened to him. He was lit on fire. He was having an aneurysm. Was he there? Was he not there? Who the hell knows?
We don't know.
It's a sad situation. Neve Campbell, star of Scream, also lists this as one of the scariest movies she has ever seen.
This is all stuff and nonsense. They
love it. It's hard to say.
Then they're dum-dums.
This was the first film to win Best Picture in the Canadian Film Awards after its name.
That ain't saying much.
It's a sad situation. It was nominated for 10 genies and won 8. There you go. That's what they
What the
call
hell's a
the
genie?
Canadian film. It was called the Genie Awards. So there you
That
go.
sounds some kind of like sex crime. I don't know.
It
Go
could
ahead.
be. Who's to say? You may know this. You may not know this. The woman who played his love interest, Trish Van Devere, I believe her name is, was his wife in real life. And they
Yeah,
starred.
sparks were flying.
They start.
Did you really ask me if I knew who the hell George C. Scott was ever married to?
You know, you're his biographer. You did a little research on his past and present loves. They did like 8 movies together. It's basically that situation where it's like Clint Eastwood is with Sandra Locke for 6 years, and she's in every one of his movies.
Sandra Locke was the worst.
She is the worst. If you've not seen, go back and watch pretty much any Clint Eastwood movie from that era, and there's this anchor that's being towed behind it, and that anchor's name is Sandra Locke, because she is basically community theater level dropout quality acting. It is horrendous. Horrendous.
Well, she would have fit right into this movie.
You're telling me. Most terrifying part. This house does not really exist. They could not.
Fakey.
Yeah, they couldn't find a suitable mansion, so they basically found a house and put a Victorian facade around the front of it. So, and all the interiors were filmed in a set. So there you go.
Yeah, I didn't buy it.
Crazy old Melvin Douglas, who played Senator Carmichael, was in his final 2 movies. Were both horror movies, both ghost stories. He was in this movie and he was in the movie Ghost Story, which had a bunch of old actors in it. Good
Terrible. We had to read that for book club last year for Halloween. Yawn.
Peter Straub, who wrote these books, I'm not a huge fan. He wrote a book called Shadowland that I swear I read over the course of 5 years and found it the most boring book. I have this curse where it's like if I start a book, I'm compelled to finish it. Like I have to finish it, no matter how long it takes me. Now I may put it down for 5 or 6 years, but then I'll always come back to it because I'm cursed that way. It's a sad situation.
Yikes.
It is. This movie is based on loosely based on real events that supposedly took place at the Henry Treat Rogers Mansion in Denver, Colorado. A writer was staying there during the 60s. And supposedly there was some haunting kind of situation where it was like a boy, they found an old wheelchair kind of thing, ghost boy, but they could never find out. They never solved the mystery. They never were able to kind of figure out who the father was or whatever. Somebody lived there, but they were childless. So who knows what happened? It's a sad situation.
All right.
George C. Scott learned how to play the piece of classical music that he plays on the piano for the college students.
I did notice that he was actually playing the piano.
He learned that one thing, and I like how he's like playing it with the college students, and he's like, that sounded pretty good, except for you, dear. You were coming in a little late on that one. I'm going to single you out for some reason. What was the purpose of the scene? Who the hell knows?
They had to pretend he was teaching something.
Right, exactly. How'd you like to be that one student there? You're like an extra. You're like, okay. They hired me as a violist, and I've been playing for 50 years, but thank you for your little critique there, George C. Thanks.
Well, now she's a featured extra.
Now, exactly. Spanish filmmaker Alejandro Amenabar has claimed in several interviews this is one of his all-time favorite horror movies, and that inspired his movies such as The Others with Nicole Kidman. So there you go.
I do like The Others.
I do.
That's the one I always think was M. Night Shyamalan.
The Others is great, which means it was not M. Night Shyamalan. So there you go. This is the first on-screen appearance of actor Joshua Jackson. He played a small child in this movie, like a baby in this movie. You know Joshua Jackson because he was Pacey on Dawson's Creek. So there you go.
Oh, I thought he was like Tito's younger brother.
Marlon, Tito, Joshua. Yes. You know him, don't you? Let's see. I think that's all we need to know. The wheelchair sequence was filmed in Seattle. Good times. So worthless.
So that was important.
That was very important. Should we talk about the cast?
I thought we just did.
We did, but I'm going to talk about it a little more. You know, old George C. Scott played John Russell.
I always remember him from there's a shitty version of A Christmas Carol.
Yes, he was Ebenezer Scrooge.
Yep.
Yep. I think, was that made for TV? That might have been made for TV.
For sure.
I think it was
hated
Scrooge.
They start getting rid of the older ones. Like I like the ones from like the 30s and the 40s. They're much creepier, and they're moving forward with this George C. Scott and God bless Captain Picard. I don't want to see fucking Patrick Stewart as Ebenezer.
As anything other than Jean-Luc.
That's it. Jean-Luc.
That's all I need. Okay. You know George C. obviously from Patton. The second movie on the list, The Changeling. There you go. He was also in Dr. Strangelove, Inherit the Wind, The Hustler. Trish Vanderveer played Claire Norman, the nice lady from the Historical Society. You know her from everything that George C. did. She was in The Changeling.
Keep an eye on him. You got to keep an eye on your man.
Pretty much. And some other random things. I don't know. I'm not going to go into it. Melvin Douglas played Senator Carmichael. He was a very well-respected actor back in the day. You know him from Being There in 1979.
That's
HUD.
my dad's favorite movie.
He was in HUD with Paul Newman back in 1963.
Never saw it.
Good times. Not necessary. I don't know if I need to go into any of these other people.
No, it was really like a one-man show, really.
It was absolutely a one-man show. Shall we talk about the rating? The rating, according to Rotten Tomatoes, 83% fresh.
I mean, I'm at a loss.
Audience,
the movie we're going to review next has a lower rating than that, but I think is 1,000 times better.
Well, audiences gave it 79%, so there you go. Let's see. Any top critics worth their salt that we want to talk about? Let's see. Roger Ebert.
Shut up, Roger Ebert. From the grave. What are you going to say?
2.5 out of 4. Rotten.
Yeah.
If it only...
See, we were always simpatico, Roger Ebert and I, until he got older.
If it only took craftsmanship to make a haunted house movie, The Changeling would be a great one. That's it. That's a shot. Very sad. So what do you got for The Changeling?
For The Changeling, for George C. Boring Scott, I am going to give it 2.25 boy Samiras out of 5. Throw him back in the goddamn well.
They should have thrown George C. in the well. Is that what you're suggesting as well?
Everybody's in the well. The horses, Samira, the weird little dead baby, the family in the coal cartridge. They all need to go in the well.
The nice lady from the Historical Society.
She's on top. I'm jumping up and down, sealing that well up. And then what happens to the family where they ripped up the floor? Do they just put down some Pergo and call it a day?
She was
an open well of corpse in there.
I have to say, she was very understanding. I expected George C. to be like, look, I'll pay for any repairs. No, he's not. I'm going to come here with a chainsaw and handle it myself if that's cool. Oh, sure. We wanted to remodel that room anyway, I guess.
Exactly. No problem. Just ripped up my floor. I don't know you. If you tell me there's a well full of dead babies in there, why not? Tear away.
Tear away. Now, in her defense, her child did have a nightmare the night before. So
how many nightmares did I have, and how many holes did my parents bust through the floor looking for ghost babies? My mom would give you a crucifix and tell you to get back into bed.
She'd give you a crucifix.
She did. She'd take the one off the wall in their bedroom and it's like, take this. Nothing can get you. Close the door on your way out.
Now, after it finished burning your flesh, what did you do? Oh, I'm going to give it 2 out of 5 haunted Victorian wheelchairs rolling down the stairs.
So we are in agreement.
I mean, I'm probably being a little harsh. This movie's not horrible. It's just a slow burn. That should have been written on the poster. Yeah. It's a slow burn. It's not that scary because I think on some level you need to have the main character being afraid. Yeah. And if he's not afraid, then it's who cares?
CSI Miami.
It is. It's CSI Miami at that point. It's a sad situation.
The end makes no sense. For sure, it's not the worst movie we saw. It is better than The Swarm.
Whoa.
Although just as long, I might say, I think.
Sweet Jesus. Let's go ahead and talk about our movie for next week.
What is that?
We are going to be doing the new classic, Malignant.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
you know what? I wasn't even going to see it. I'm glad you brought it up because when we went to see Candyman, it was also out. And William compared the ratings, William's my son, and said that Candyman got much higher ratings. So he's like, it looks like it's a dud. But
well, it's definitely controversial. I think there are strong opinions on either side. Now, listeners, I have to tell you something. You're going to have to get off your butt, get in your car, and drive to the theater to watch this bad boy because it is no longer available anywhere else. So there you go. Check it out.
It's worth it. It's worth it. Neo Giallo.
So
if you like the films of Argento, then you will like the Malignant. So like that, like my racist Italian.
A little racist. So you're gonna have to check your local newspaper to find out the times for Malignant. So check that out.
Do it. I'm telling you. Especially if you have any experience with Italian horror movies. It was very refreshing.
Directed by James Wan. You know him, Insidious, The Conjuring, the Saw movies. He covers all the bases. So this is the latest James Wan excursion. So check that stuff out.
Kevin never told me. Kevin, Malignant. Yes. Thumbs up, thumbs down.
The problem is, and I don't want to go too... I don't want to go too deep. I kind of knew the twist. And so that kind of spoiled it a little bit for me. I think it's pretty good.
Oh.
That's as far as I want to go. But, so you're going to have to hear more about this. You're going to have to tune in next week. So thank you very much. Go to our page on Twitter at TPodcast, TW Die. Go to our page on Facebook at The Podcast That Wouldn't Die. Aaron, you're doing good stuff on Instagram. How do I find you on Instagram? Or how do I find us on Instagram?
Well, if you want to find us, we are The Podcast That Wouldn't Die on Instagram. If you want to find fine art and ways that I can elevate your life, then you go to The Cult of Aaron or Don't Feed the Pigeon. Boom.
Good times had by all. Don't forget you can email us at The Podcast That Wouldn't Die at Gmail. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. We're on Good Pods. Check that out. Good times had by all.
What is Good Pods? I've never heard of that.
It's a newer podcasting app that is sweeping the nation. So check it out. For goodness sake.
I'm glad you let me know.
There you go. Make sure that you like, share, rate, and subscribe. Not necessarily in that order. I always mess up the order. So make sure you do that and spread the word. The more, the merrier.
Oh, yeah. Did you say we're on the Twitski?
I did say we're on the Twitski. And Aaron, you've already given all your social media, so that's good to know. So make sure you contact Aaron. Send her personal DMs anytime, day or night.
Stop sending me direct messages.
Aaron loves it.
Can I ask you something personal? No.
The answer is always no to that question. If you have to ask, you already know the answer. So there you have it. Like we said, next week we'll be doing Malignant, only in theaters. Thank you very much, and be well.